This is part 2 of how to make a $500 feature, or in this case, a $5,000 feature. The $500 one is the documentary, and that is the narrative horror feature. Okay, I'm going to get into the sort of nitty-gritty. A lot of people are curious, like, if I'm a first-time filmmaker, how am I supposed to hire a star, okay? So the first thing you have to understand is it's not going to be Tom Cruise, okay? The second thing you have to understand is it may not be your first feature film that you get the star on. Your first feature film might be the sort of proving ground to get something under your belt. This is the way I did it. The first feature film I made was a 90-minute 16mm feature film. It did not get home distribution at the time. It took years for that to happen. And it was comedic drama, and it had some critical praise and some bad praise, but it didn't go anywhere. So the second one I did was sort of a trauma-style movie called Land of College Prophets, and it was about these brawlers who go to college and they awaken a haunted wishing well. So it's sort of like sci-fi horror comedy, so very out there. But it had action in it, and it had sci-fi, and it had horror, and it had crazy artwork, and everyone was dressed up like backyard superheroes. So I was like a brawling priest, and my buddy Phil looked like Guile from Street Fighter, and so there's all these outfits. So like as a product, it looked crazy, and so this company called, when we finished the film, we submitted to festivals and then distribution companies, and this one company in New York was like, "Yeah, we'll put this out." They knew it didn't look like an expensive film. We were shooting on a AG DVX 100, an early 24-frame Panasonic camera that looked decent. And so they put the film out. And once that film was out, it was actually a hit. It was in all the movie galleries and the Hollywood videos. And so once that was a hit, and it was on Netflix. It was on the earliest version of Netflix. And from there, the next movies we tried to make, did this one called London Betty. We were able to get Daniel von Bargen, who was in Seinfeld. He was Mr. Kruger from Seinfeld, and he was in Oh Brother Where Art Thou, and most famous for, what was that show? Malcolm in the Middle. He played Spangler, the military guy. So we got him, loved his work in Super Troopers and all that stuff. And the thing is, you have to understand, like, you can get people that are highly recognizable. Like in that same film, we had Clint Howard as well. He narrated the whole film for us. And it's likely that at least some people, some working actors, will do an independent film. You may have to pay him $1,000 or something like that, and maybe you can only hire him for like a day or two. And that's what we did with Daniel von Bargen. You write a part for someone who could stay in the same place and be in multiple parts of the film. So with Daniel von Bargen, he was in multiple parts of the film. We used the same technique for Ellen Muth in this film. This is Exorcism of Fleete Marish. So Ellen Muth, we could hire. It was like a day and a half we could get her. We got her in the afternoon and then the next day. And so I had a part where she could be throughout the whole film. And we had to do that for the horror special makeup effects, which you'll see the leper in this movie looks crazy. It's because they spent, like, I think 8 hours putting the leper in the outfit. Mark Bovino, this actor, in the outfit. And it took... so we had to plan it out, so we got all our horror effects within those 2 days. So the point is, you absolutely can hire famous people, but you have to think outside of the box. Think about your favorite movies. Who's the sidekick in that movie? Who's the interesting character actor in that movie? Not the star. And think that way, and because those people sometimes want to work, Clint Howard just took a chance on the film, and mind you, I had struck out like many other times with other actors. I think we wanted to get the guy Wallace Shawn. He didn't want to do it. Billy Connolly. We were trying to find all these narrators, and Clint Howard was the guy who was like, yeah, okay, I'll do it, you know. But the reason why he did it is because his agent checked me out and was like, yeah, they do low budget genre films. And at the time, he did Ice Cream Man and did some horror. He was like, yeah, okay, I'll try it. So you just never know. But the way it works also, you don't approach someone. They give you this sort of crock of crap in Hollywood that you have to smooth talk everyone and go to all these parties and get people on board that way. And I have found that none of that stuff works. The thing that works is having money in place, having the exact time you want them to shoot and come to set, and the conditions in which they're hired. And if you can do that, even if you're talking to an agent that may be rude for you, because some of these people still have large agents. That's what happened with Clint Howard. I call up his agent, and it's like the same agent as all these super famous people. And I'm like, yeah, I'm looking to hire talent. And the person on the other end was just already did not want to field my call. She's like, yeah, who do you want to hire? And I'm like, Clint Howard. And she was like, she kind of backed down because it was like, oh, all right, he's not delusional. He's not trying to hire Tom Cruise. I basically said, I'm looking to hire Clint Howard to narrate the film, so I need to hire him for a day. I could fly him out to New York, and I can put him in a hotel. You know, I'll go to a recording studio, and and he actually called me back and he was like, yeah, you know what? If you come out here, I got a guy with the studio, and and I was like, okay, so we did it that way. So the point is, like, it's so funny. Like the secret to booking name talent, you'd call them, is competency. It's having money in place, having good material, and then telling them how much they're paying, how much they'll get paid, and where to show up and when. And so many people don't do it that way because they bought into this horseshit of, I'm going to go to a bar and hang out with this actor and convince him to get on board my film, And, maybe it does happen that way, but for normal people who are not part of that, we're very much on the outside counterculture. It's just a matter of, what does it pay? What's the job? Where do I have to be? And then, then it's yes or no. Greg's second unit camera, a Panasonic camera, shot in this really cool slow-mo. This is broad daylight. You can kind of tell. We tried to fool day for night in the post-production. On the left is a lake, so the sky looks dark, but really that's what it is. So, yeah, that's kind of how you hire name talent. You do have to sign up for SAG ultra low budget agreement, and typically they'll make you put like a couple grand in an account that you'll be able to get back later, but they want proof that you're going to pay their actors. Even if you literally write the actor a check beforehand, they still want that money in place, which is unusual, but that's how they roll. And then when the film is done and there's proof of payment, they typically will release those funds so you get it back. So you can't really count that as part of the budget because you get it back. This is the outfit that Lee Rezawan took so much time to shoot. And this is the biggest scene with the leper where he's like tied down, and this took a very long time. So this was really hot. And okay, this cut-in shot, that was the makeup shots we did on the weekend. We had a fake foam leg, and we heated up this hook in the fire and we scorched it. And so we didn't have to do burning scenes on set and with Mark in that outfit or any of that stuff. So those are the inserts that we got. And so you leave stuff like that stuff that is like maybe effector-based close-ups, or stuff that you know that you could pick up at another time. Though anytime it cuts to a close-up, they often are extreme close-ups, partially because the foam leg didn't look great, and if you zoomed out too much. But in a close-up, it worked pretty well. Debbie Rochon and Dick Bullen, I think, are excellent actors, and that will save you a huge amount of trouble. So if you can hire skilled people who are very good at their craft and will memorize lines and all that stuff, the professional stuff, then things will go much smoother. And you would be surprised how many people just want to work. Debbie obviously is more famous, but some of the other actors, just wanted to just have the acting bug in them and just wanted to do something. And I think 90s, early 2000s filmmaking, there was this great hope that you could make an independent film and keep moving up the ladder and make bigger studio films and become famous. And that did happen. A lot of it was anecdotal, and a lot of those stories, when you really examine them, Tarantino I like to bring up. He's a brilliant filmmaker by any standard, one of the best living. But even Reservoir Dogs, the funding was studio funding. It was through this company Live that was owned by Carol Cole, which did all the Rambo movies, and then Disney owned Miramax by the time you got to Pulp Fiction. So you could make the case that Tarantino was never really an independent filmmaker, though one of the best filmmakers who ever lived. Or are living rather. So it's that kind of thing when you really pick through the cases. Robert Rodriguez is one of the few exceptions, as well as Kevin Smith with Clerks, genuinely made what you'd call a no-budget film. El Mariachi was $9,000, I think, or $7,000, and Clerks was like $40,000. And they did. You can dissect that a little bit. In both of those cases, the studios bought them and then poured $250,000 into post-production to make them what we saw. So El Mariachi, we saw $250,000 film. Clerks, we saw $250,000 film. So there's even some. It's not an asterisk, but it's like the marketing of it was a very specific style, and anyone can just do it, actually. So these distribution companies, independent distribution companies, still exist. Troma, Full Moon, Glass Eye, that still put out independent feature-length films, low-budget horror, things like that. They're still out there, and if I'm being honest, I can't say there's a lot of money to be made if you're staying independent. The money is made when you're working on a larger project. Typically that's not yours. That's the truth of it. That's in my career. That's how I worked for places like CBS and NBC and IGN even. You're usually doing stuff that's not yours. I love the slow zooms on this camera. I kind of miss. It's funny because what the camera lacked in color space, it was an early camera. It was called an early Canon camera called the Canon H1. It doesn't matter so much in black and white because you can still get a good effect, but the lens on this thing, I think it was like something crazy, like an 18 to 200 or something, 135 or something. But the zoom was just incredible, and I had this very slow electronic zoom. That's something we went to rely on, although there are dolly shots in this. You can use a zoom in a dramatic way that is not sort of the crash zoom like the kung fu movies from the 70s, You can use a slow zoom in a way like this. Actually, this I believe is an electron. This is a zoom we did in post, versus most of the zooms we did in camera. So this film, the version of this film, the 2023 version, Exorcism of Fleete Marish, it won, I believe, 6 awards and is now on DirecTV. And I think it got 1 or 2 for best score. Tim Kulik did a great job. I think it got a makeup effects award, and then if you look at that, it's insane. And then some other best film awards. So, and that's to just demonstrate a no-budget film could still win awards, it could still place in festivals, and it could still get distribution. Okay, so, and I did several films this way. Land of College Prophets, distributed by York Entertainment. Again, that was on Netflix, earliest version of Netflix. Blended Betty was Maverick Entertainment. Was in the last. It was one of the last films in Blockbuster Video, and then and streamed as well. All of them streamed in various formats. And then the VHS Massacre films were documentaries, and those played everywhere from Peacock TV to MUBI to Yale University. So those are actually documentaries. Those are the most famous thing I did. But those are even cheaper. Those are $500 movies, and I'll tell you how I did those. You got these amazing makeup effects here. You got Debbie Rochon, who's one of the best independent screen queens of all time. This is another stock footage, and this is not stock footage. It splices in rather easily, and you don't have to do black and white, but with modern color grading, DaVinci Resolve or even Lumetri Color within Premiere, you can match shots very carefully. If a shot's too sharp, even, you could take down the sharpness of it slightly and color grade everything to push color into it. The original version of this film had added grain and had like a sort of tobacco hue to it. And in hindsight, I actually think it was a mistake. We should have been brave enough to just go black and white, because I think it just looks better. With the grain reduction, I think it really worked for this film too, to add a kind of polish that it didn't have. Your day-to-day on a film shoot is pretty grueling. You're going to be tired all the time. You're going to be a little cranky. You got to make sure to get meals in. The biggest thing you pay for on a film set is catering, typically, and you're catering mostly lunch. If you're real careful, everyone can eat before they go on film set. You feed them lunch, and then you let them go before dinner so they could go home and have dinner. So there are ways to do it where, so that if you do that scenario, then maybe you get away with spending like $2,000 on catering, $2-3 on catering, and that's going to be your biggest expense. Is catering. You have a lot of volunteers, maybe one person that who's the star who you could pay to draw to maybe help you get a distribution deal. And in this case, that was Debbie Rochon and Ellen Muth. But you could certainly do it with just one person. Like Debbie Rochon would probably do it. That is basically it. If you get into nitty gritty, breaking down a script, when you have your finished script, I use something very basic, different color highlight markers, where you chunk out what locations coincide, what's all in the same place, what has the same actors, and you start blocking out the day. You start collecting things you're going to shoot on this one day, collecting things you're going to shoot on this other day, based upon locations and actors, and limitations. So we had a monster day. Well, we had 2 monster days. We had an Ellen Muth day, where we were shooting her all day long, because we only had her for a day and a half. And then other obligations as well. So that's how you break down. You might say, well, what do I shoot on what day? Well, start with immovable things. We had a gun day. Curtis, our buddy, came out with this cap gun. It looks real, but it's like a big, basically glorified cap gun. That was our gun day. You have things that are required on certain days, and then there's room to play with all the other stuff. You always have stuff that you can cut if need to, meaning that you don't need it for the film to still work. This kind of blocking with both characters and frame, I love this kind of stuff anyway. To me, this stuff was never this was never cutting corners to, let's say, block shots with it's all your characters in a frame and stuff like that. I mean, this is only 2, but there are ones where it's like 5, 6 people in a frame, you know. I love that stuff. So, and you will find that some of your style can come out of what you prefer, and sometimes your style can even come out of limitations. So you just have to be, step 1, write a script that's limited locations, totally shootable, that's not super special effects heavy. And step 2 would be, and then try to get some money in place, book that location, try to get as many people to volunteer. You could shoot a horror film. Shoot it, like I said, take 1 week off from work, shoot that whole weekend, the Monday through Friday, the weekend after, that's 9 days, then rest for a month, and then do a weekend, a Saturday, Sunday, 11 days total, that last weekend's makeup shots, and put together an 80-minute, you know, feature-length horror film, and try to sell it for a deal. You may not get cash up front. You may never make a dime, but you'll be a filmmaker, a feature-length filmmaker, which is, at least in the United States, a sort of bar that most people never get to. You can keep doing it over and over. Thanks for listening. See you next time.